news with the Chicago Bears. We know how bad the team is struggling.
Yeah.
Caleb Williams, they fired the offensive coordinator, the Bears did. It's just a matter of time before the coach is going to be out, as that's pretty obvious. But, Rob G., you have some scuttlebutt from the talk show in Chicago.
Yeah, so you know the world famous show Waddle and Sylvie, ESPN Chicago. They've been around forever. Two of the most respected members of the media in that area. So Sylvie put out a tweet about an hour after the news broke that Shane Waldron was being fired as the offensive coordinator. And in it, he said two things. One, that several Bears players went to Eberflus and GM Ryan Poles and said, hey, it's not working with Waldron. We got to move on, replace him. Maybe not fire him, do whatever you got to do. He's not doing a good job with the offense. But then he added there at the end of his tweet, also, several Bears veterans believe that Tyson Bagent should be starting at quarterback over Caleb Williams.
Well, for them to say Tyson Bagent, who sounds more like a good law firm, Bagent and Bagent, or a laundry detergent or something, I mean, that just shows you how bad things are going right now in Chicago. When, again, just maybe 3-4 weeks ago, we were all feeling like, all right, maybe this team might be better than we thought. Maybe this team, can mess around and contend in the NFC North, or at least make some noise in the NFC and maybe be one of those teams sneaks into a wild card position.
Well, don't forget, they lost a game that was devastating to them. And that was the defense. That was the defense giving up. If you remember, Caleb led them down.
Yep.
To the go-ahead score, and then, remember, that's how your season changes.
They all of a sudden give up some points, and they didn't have a massive offensive outputting that game. But I'm talking about a chance to win.
Well, he led them down. They were behind the whole game, and they actually took the lead, and then came the Hail Mary, which was just an awful play by the defense.
You got guys, obviously we know what happened. And little, to your point, little things like that can fracture an already fragile team that's just trying to hold it together, right? You got defensive players talking smack with the crowd during a play, not paying attention on a Hail Mary, and it seems like their season has gone. They need some Hail Mary, some prayers right now since then. But one of the things that you heard about Caleb Williams in college, especially here being in local at SC, USC, and us here being here in LA, was that as magnificent as he is, the one criticism, this is during his Heisman campaign and especially the next year, last year, 2023, was that maybe, just maybe, a couple of things, Rob, and this is where I feel like it leads to, the second point will be where I think it leads to what you hear from some of the veterans on this team. One is that he holds the ball too long. And he's been used to that because he's been better than everybody in high school, better than everybody in college. I can do this. I can make these Superman-like plays. When you start to look at some of his numbers now, it starts to resemble that this is what he believes. He's 32nd in completion percentage, 55.5%. Yards per attempt are this low. He's at 4.9. He's sacked 18 times, including 9 just this past previous game. He's tied for 31st in passing touchdowns with 0, Rob, and 30th in total QBR at 21.2 during this losing streak specifically that he's been on, this losing streak. All these numbers are for that. So you look at him holding the ball. You look at him all of a sudden holding the ball too much in college. And this is what they're saying he does. He tries to, and you can get away with this in college because you're just better than everybody. And those separations are much larger between your receiver and the defensive backs in college because you're SC and you're playing some schools that aren't that great with a bunch of guys who are going to often become sales insurance agents. Not in the NFL with pros who are good. The second half of this is, you remember hearing little weird things about, like, he maybe not get along with the guys. He's kind of a different guy. He's a little bit aloof, and he's kind of a different cat when it comes to leadership ability. And to me, that might scream loud, too, when you have veterans with a talented young player who are already kind of ready to give up. Sometimes talent just ain't it, where they'll go, all right, look, he's struggling right now. We're not winning, but you know what? We like to do. We believe in his leadership. He'll be all right eventually. When you start getting guys ready to do this already, Rob, we're a little over halfway through the season. To me, that screams that there's something more than just getting sacked. There's something more than offense not scoring. To me, this might also scream something to leadership, something to locker room issues.
Yeah, I totally disagree. I think this is what teams do They panic. This is the third number one overall pick that's had a coaching change in their first year. This happens often because there's an adjustment that has to be made. And you can't listen to just players, a handful of players in the locker room, because it's not a popularity contest. That's why you have a GM. That's why you have a coach. That's why you have other people. It just can't be because you like somebody or we all work with people that we don't all like or feel like we have a connection or a vibe with, but it doesn't mean that they can't do their job. And I think this is where people get caught up in it. We talk about it all the time. It's not just about feelings and whether or not he's cool or I want to hang out with him or he talks to me or whatever it is. People are all different. And if you're winning, none of that ever comes up. Nobody would ever talk about those things because it's only when you lose that you could try to find a rhyme or reason why. And I think that's what you have to be careful of, because losing brings out where people are ready to throw the blame on somebody or try to figure out it's because he painted his nails in college. It's because, like all these other reasons other than maybe A, he's a rookie learning how to play in the NFL. B, they have a terrible offensive line. C, their offensive coordinator is not great. There's a lot of reasons, and I'm not absolving him or saying he's not to blame or he doesn't have to play better. But I saw some moments there. This is not a season long where he couldn't get anything going. And that's what happened to that 3 weeks ago. What would have happened if they won that game against Washington on the road, right? That would change your season, your perspective. I doubt you would be hearing from veterans talk about, we need to make a change or put somebody else in. I've seen this. I've been covering this league since 1987. You got to be careful. It's not a popularity contest. It's a talent-driven business. If they tell you that after 8-9 games that he can't play, I'll tell you that I don't buy into that. Can he play better? Absolutely. Do I want to wait and see a little more before I make a decision on where he is? Absolutely. But I think this is a rush to judgment.
They're absolutely not going to get rid of him. I mean, they did too much to get somebody like him. They gave up to get him in this position to get him. And I think he's too talented. Just pure ability, pure raw talent. You've seen enough to know this guy can be.
This ain't Daniel Jones, who I knew early on.
100%.
I don't see anything here.
He
Please
can't
help
go
me.
from the best prospect, quote unquote, since Andrew Luck to now he's an issue. And again, this is the problem when you have an organization that doesn't necessarily have an identity and still trying to figure this thing out. They've got some talent around him. You got DJ Moore. You got some backs. They got some. They brought in an offensive coordinator specifically for him, which obviously didn't work out already. So I don't know. Maybe they had some issues because it isn't as if it's some long run thing where they've had 2 or 3 years to figure this thing out. They haven't. But offense has been putrid over the last this losing streak that they're on. They have not looked right at all. He's got sacked a crazy amount of times. So it's
some of them are on him, but some of them are on the offensive line as well.
Without a doubt. And again, when you look at some of these numbers of how long he's holding the ball longer than any other quarterback. He did that, and he was second in all of college last year. But again, he got to get away with it because he was just that good. Because the talent gaps between SC versus some of the schools they play are that wide. When you're in the pros, it's a few plays here or there that separate you from the teams that you're competing against. When you're in the pros, it's a few player or two. Maybe you have 1 or 2 more talented players than you have, and that's really the difference. So I think he is now adjusting to and going to have to, I'm in a bad situation offensive line-wise. I'm going to have to also help them by trying to be in rhythm, trying to be in sync, trying to be a part of what we do when we design these 5-step drop backs, 7-step drop backs. Be in sync, being on time. But absolutely, he is not going anywhere, and these guys need to get over that. He's the number 1 pick. He's the heralded guy that they were clamoring for. They got him. They just got to figure out a way to make this thing work.